everybody. Good evening, and welcome to another session of our Ultimate Back to School series. Welcome. We were away. We were not here last week. We were out touching the community last week, and we've done three series. This is our third session. So if you're here today, a very big welcome to you and everybody else that is around you. Today, we're dealing with a very interesting topic, the last part in our 3 week series. As part of our ultimate back to school preparations for us parents and young people to go back to school. So, if you are with a friend, a sister, a brother, please alert them that we are online, alert them that we are about to go live, so they should join us, even as we go live. So if you're watching us online, please give us a shout. Please do make sure that um, you are here with us. Make sure that you invite a brother or sister. And I think that we are not online on Instagram, so I'm gonna very quickly ensure that we are on Instagram very, very, very quickly, and then we will be able to carry on. Yeah, we're not online on Instagram. Do bear with me. Yeah, we're not. Okay, I'm gonna put us on Instagram right now. And whilst we are doing that, please ensure that you're inviting a friend. And let's see whether we are on Instagram now. Yep, and we are on Instagram live. Um, so let's see how we do this. All right. So yeah, thank you all so much. We are on all platforms at the moment, and please tell a friend, tell a sister, tell a brother that we are live on Instagram, we are live on YouTube, and we are live on Facebook. So please tell a brother, tell a friend. All right. We just give people a few minutes. Whilst we're doing that, I'll just ask my guests to first of all introduce themselves and tell us a bit about themselves while we're waiting for people to troop in on all the platforms. Please. So I will go to who do I go to first? I'll go to Max first because you're at the top of my screen. Hi, Max.
Fantastic. Hey, Phyllis. Hello,
Phyllis,
everyone. Yeah, wicked.
it's good to
Welcome
have
to
you
be
back.
here. I think it
Thank
was
you.
this time last year I was here.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, had a great time, so I had to come back. So I think it's really important that, you know, when we have this knowledge that it's shared, when we have experiences that it's shared, and we have spaces like this that they utilize to their maximum. So I'm just really looking forward to using my experience as a social worker, my experience with it as a community safety lead, a gangs lead, and using my experience working with young people, having those transition periods in school. Okay, cool. That's me.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Max. And I go to my big sister, um, Cynthia. Please, can you introduce yourself in your full capacity? I put on the flyer, I said parent. I said parent, but I know your remit is much far, far, far beyond just a parent.
Oh,
So if you could tell us a bit about yourself, please.
thank you so much for having me. This is my first time on this platform, so I'm very honored to be in this space. I think in this space, I'm coming in definitely as a parent, a parent to three lovely children, a Christian parent to three lovely children as well, I might add. I also, in my day-to-day basis, I've worked in the education field and internationally supporting children to get access to quality education. So I think I also understand what it's like to make classrooms effective. But within this space, I've been leaning on my experience, having traveled and seen what raising children in different contexts and environments look like, and also trying to raise children whilst doing that looks like. So very pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right. It's a pleasure to have you. I don't know, there's a noise coming from somewhere. I don't know where the noise is coming from. So please, if either of you can check it for me, I'm not sure um, where the noise is coming from. But let's kickstart this conversation, because this conversation is something I think, when the context of talking about building resilience as a whole theme, um, this is one of the aspects of it that really touches me. Um, because I'm African. I'm from a Ghanaian household, and growing up, it was the whole community that built me. It was things around me. We Africans are, everybody talks about culture, and we know culture to be a way of life. And I always say that the things that you allow around you is what makes you, and indirectly or directly. And so when we are talking about building resilience, it's very, very important for us to understand all the environmental, the things in our community, all the external influences that goes a long way to affect a young person or a child, in us hoping to build resilience in children. I was looking at a very funny thing it felt funny, but it isn't funny. An older person was saying that, oh, every little thing, the Gen Zs will say, my mental health, because back in the day, the things that we went through, the things that we saw, the things that we had to deal with, you didn't even have the time to talk about your mental health. And so that gets me thinking that, what, we are in an era that, the society has also contributed in how the resilience in our children are. So my first question for you both is, because I've got two panelists and I'm just really gonna really enjoy the conversation, because it's gonna give you both enough time to talk about what you really believe in terms of building resilience around us. So my first question, I'll take it to Cynthia, and it says, we have this saying that it takes a village to raise a child. So what role does the environment and the wider community around the child play in shaping their confidence and their well-being and their resilience? What role do you think our environment has to play in how we shape our children? Thank you.
I love that. And I think it's really great that you started a series with building resilience within.
Yeah.
Because I think the starting point has got to be the child, the young person growing to an adult. What does resilience look like for them? And it differs from child to child in every household. And many would say that the young child's experience of the parents is possibly different from the eldest child's experience of the parents. So the resilience from within is always a starting point. So I'm really pleased you started on that. And then looking at resilience from the broader community, my counter question is always, do we really want every part of the village to contribute to this child? I'm going to be a bit radical here in saying this. Culturally, I do accept that we need multiple factors and multiple people to help in developing and shaping our children's experience, right? But my counter question is always, do we need all parts of the broader community? There is the role that the parents play. There is the role that the broader family that the child comes in, from the father side, from the mother side, the role that they also play in raising the child's values, self-esteem, and their worldview on what is morally right and morally questionable. Then there's the wider community, like the churches, the schools, they all have a role to play, as well as friends. But my probing question for me and how I react when I am looking at my children is I question who should have an influence in my child's life. I probe and check, even within broader family members, whose values aligns with what I'm teaching my children about God, whose values aligns with what I'm teaching my children about a civil world and a morally upright world. So it is not for me an open invitation to the entire world and community to help shape the child, but for me, it is exposing the child to different parts of life, exposing the child to different views and value systems in life. From starting within, your parents will have different views and strength of views. Your nuclear wider family would have different value systems that they've also taught their children, i.e., your cousins and etc. And just exposing my children to what that looks like and how they hold both views in mind when they are trying to be as strong in Christian values, when they're trying to build their self-esteem, and when they're trying to build who they want to be as adults. So I think the core message for me here is, do I want the whole world to influence my child? And for me, the answer is very clearly no. And I want to be intentional about who has space in my children's upbringing. So I'll pause there.
All right. Thank you very much. That's quite powerful. And Max, what was your thoughts on that question? We say it takes a village. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to second it in sort of saying, you know, of course it takes a village, of course it takes a community, but I really like that phrase in some ways, and I dislike it in others because I think it takes away the individual purpose, because I think we sometimes can move around and sometimes think, okay, it's this entire community, and that sort of takes away the individuality of the child and their own purpose, because this is a time in their life, whether we're talking about, you know, young teenagers, middle ages, very young children, but I think what we're talking about is young people coming into their own, forming those values of their own, and actually that's a purpose and a path that they're going to have to tread that by themselves, and we may try and guide them, and we may try and control the village and who is in it and who is around them. But if they want to go and leave the proverbial village and go and explore, it is totally down to them, but it is about what makes them go and look at elsewhere. And I think it isn't about trying to hide values, as Cynthia was talking about. It isn't trying to hide other people's opinions or shield children from the truth. It's about allowing them to have that space to discuss it with you, because I think if children are fearful of having those discussions with the closest to them, their parents, their peers, and their loved ones, then they may turn to others who want to force their opinions on them. And I think it is important to be able to, you know, I always think when I've worked with young people, I always think of this quote. I remember even saying, you know, we started this conversation talking about mental health, and we know about Will Smith and his difficulties with his son and his own family. And I remember him even saying, you know, I remember him on a chat show saying, when I was, you know, Jaden's age, I had such difficulty and I used to say so much stupid stuff. But now, unfortunately, they have the world at their fingertips and they can say this stuff outwards, and their inner monologues are no longer so inward, and it is really, really difficult to control that. So I think it is about having that purpose, and also not devaluing the child's individuality and being able to tread this path alone. Because if they think that teenage years are being walked for them, they will start to not enjoy it that much.
Absolutely. These are some real powerful points that have been shared. Thank you both so much. And I think it's opening our mind to think, for me, that it's about opening our minds to think about what it means within that, because we all accept that, yeah, it takes a village, but you've got to still be intentional about what you are allowing in the village to influence your children, and also opening the eyes of your children to understand it's not everything that is in the village that will be for you, that will be right for you, and helping them to understand how to navigate within that village that we're talking about. So I'll come back to you, Max. I want us to talk about environmental and external influences. And my question is, from your experience as a senior social worker, what environmental factors have the greatest influence on a child's resilience today, from home and school to friendship to neighborhood to online spaces? What signs might indicate that an environment is negatively affecting your child? What are some of the signs that you see as a social worker in all these spaces that our children might find themselves?
Yeah, it's an incredibly hard path to try and pin down to these individual spaces. But I think when we actually break down complex things like this into its constituent parts, we can sort of see simple things like, home, schools, friendships, their actual local neighborhood where they hang out. Online is an even more presence, and we can look onto some of those warning signs. But as a social worker, I'm saying, I've worked for Waltham Forest for nearly 7 years now. That's a borough I've grown up in. I know the environment well, and I know the factors that have those really big influences in terms of neighborhood spaces. But I think, okay, home is always going to be a cornerstone of any child's life. And I think if we're talking here about the Black Christian experience as well in school, something that I have with young people that I'm working with is I actually have worked with them to encourage to wear their faith more on their sleeve when they go to school, because I've seen we work really closely in terms of talking about transition periods. So we talk about year 6 to year 7, and we talk about those people going on to college as well. And when I speak to young people, and especially young people of faith, they struggle really hard to actually have a space where they can say, this is me in school, because I think schools don't necessarily create an environment where they can say, this is part of my faith, this is a cornerstone of my life, I've been brought up in this way. And I think young people have to then form new identities and change or smother that part of themselves which they have grown up and flourished in for such a long time. And I think that can cause a bit of turmoil, and I can see how that can cause difficulties with between new school values and family values. And that's not to say it's schools' responsibility to have this, but I think it is also being aware of what faith means to certain families within schools. And I have spoken to teachers about that in the past, in understanding and encouraging those aspects in young people's lives. So we're talking about those friendships as well. Now, this is such a tricky one, and I'd actually say something, maybe it's not controversial, but I often find if you try to steer young people away from their friends, you're going to struggle more in having those positive relationships with them, because once young people, this is their new family at those teenage age. They get to that age, they start building those friendships. They're going to Westfields together, they're having fantastic times, making memories. Some of the best times of their lives are going to be at this age. And I think when you start to say that really lovely weekend you had, I didn't like the people you're hanging around with, I don't identify with them, that becomes really, really difficult for them. That's a point of conflict, and that brings conflict back into the home. Whereas actually, you're much, much better off forming that relationship with their friends. Come round for dinner. I've made some food. Why don't they stay over? Let's go to the movie. You get a much, much better understanding of who they are, and you'll be surprised how much it changes your opinion of them. Yes, of course, they may get up to mischief, and you hear anecdotally things that they may have done over the weekend and things like this, but that is the nature of being a teenager. And you're not also going to hear all the fantastic things that they do and the kindness and the relationships that they're building together. So you're much better off putting yourself in a position of being able to observe that than judge that. Now, when we go into the online space, when we're talking about that, that's intertwined so frequently with their friendship groups. It's right there at the forefront of how they make their friends now, and it can be their falling out, and it can be the start of burgeoning new friendships. It is a brilliant space, and I think young people can use it really well. But I also welcome parents, each individual parent's opportunity to safeguard their children however they see fit, because I do think the space can be corrupted. I do think core values are there, and I think we use it ourselves. And unlike going to the cinema where you've got a security guard going, hey, can I see your ID please, how old are you to view this video content? that is not really available online in the same way. So it's really, really important that you create a space not to judge what they're seeing, but to understand. You are both seeing the same things online, and sometimes that's a great thing. You can share those moments, but other times your children may have interactions on there that they want to come and speak to you about, and that's really, really important to have that space. So I think, going back to sort of what sign might indicate that environment is affecting them negatively, you were looking at those behavioral changes, that withdrawal, mood changes, poor sleep is another one, interconnected to that mobile phone use and social media use. Young people are actually sleeping the least they ever have now in 2026. They're staying up night watching their phone. Phones are built in with blue light screen in it. So we've seen it. Sometimes you wake up at 3 a.m. and the light shines in your eyes when you check the time, wakes you right up, doesn't it? And this is what young people are viewing all the time. Their senses are being stimulated and they struggle so much to go to sleep. So really having that shut off, and sleep is so important during that developmental stage. So I think we want to make sure that children, okay, not all children are going to want to go to school, but they're not avoiding school. They are there to see their friends. And you've got to remember what it's like being a teenager as well. It is a difficult path, and have some sympathies for that journey.
Thank you so much, Max. I really want to follow this up with a question to you, Cynthia, from the parent point of view about in the identity, independence, and outside influence. And I want to ask that, as children grow, following on directly from that question, we see that parents have less control over the environments that their children are entering into, and whether that is boarding school, friendships, social media, wider community. And I know some of your children are in that spaces where you're not there all the time. How do you give your child independence while still protecting them? Having that person. I really want you to talk about that. Following on directly from the comments that Max has highlighted in his comments that he gave, please.
I think I really love the comments you shared, Max, particularly around the importance of peers, and equally around just allowing your child to experience life as best as is within their purview to experience. I can share my lessons learned being a parent of children who are in different spaces to me, and I'll give you the context to that. So I have two children in a school, in boarding school, and the experiences will significantly differ from other children in different types of schooling. And for context, from where I am from Ghana, the norm is for children to have that growth period away from their parents to experience different facets of life. So that's the angle that we have taken, certainly myself and my husband. So just to add to that point, here are the lessons I've learned in having these children away from me. That being able to see your child, it's so crucial. I don't mean see your child as physically see your child. I mean, see the child holistically in terms of what they like and dislike. See the child as in them understanding who they are and navigating towards who they want to be. And we've all had phone calls from schools when the teacher has said your child has done that. And the initial reaction is to defensively say, no, not my child. But you will understand eventually that the child in some settings feels free and able to show all of themselves, faults and all of themselves without the fear of an adult judging them. Exposing the child to different cultures will tease out what they have learned as well as what they can see from other children's upbringing. And this is valid whether the child is in boarding or in any other school. And then, of course, when we look at what does it mean when the child is showing signs of being led one way or the other, that we, the parent, might think this is not right. I think my pushback is always to come at it objectively and question whether, as a parent, is your child always the innocent one in every single instance? We are trying to raise upstanding citizens for whichever country they're going to reside in. But are we absolutely sure that the child is always 100% the angel in every single case? And it's not. It is unrealistic. So understanding who the peers are, inviting them over, I totally second that, and something that we practice as a family. Allowing them to see how other people are also set up, what they respect, what their values are, different religions, so they get a broader perspective of life. So they're not in shock and awe mode when they become young adults and maybe they go off to university and they decide to then live beyond whatever it is that you have taught them to live beyond, which is also plausible. But I say all this to just double down on the fact that peers are important to the child's development of their self-esteem, their well-being, and who they are. There's a book I normally love to recommend, Hold On to Your Child. And this is by Gabor Mate and Gordon Neufeld. I love that book. It really charts the journey of the child right through to young adulthood and making friends, and the psychology behind that relationship being built and how that shapes their future relationships and the role of the parent during that season. So 100% peers are absolutely important to the development of the child, but ideally the child comes in from a strong sense of self, a strong, resilient sense of community from their home, that they are not swayed by every single influence that is exciting or I don't know what to call it, swayed by every single experience, that they have an anchor that they can always lean back on. And I also want to double on just exposing them to different parts of life, different groups, different communities, so they get to build different views of life and also build their self-esteem. So I think, just to wrap up on this point, I think it's hard to find a single pattern that follows through for every child when they are going down the wrong path. Beyond the, yes, you see the moody side, the withdrawal side, but also kids are so individualistic in how they process and absorb experiences. So getting to know that child and helping them to process what they're experiencing as they experience it is also going to be crucial in helping to identify if things are going well or not. We may have lost you, Phyllis.
There seems to be a slight connection drop, but yeah, no, it's a fantastic point you're making, Cynthia, because I really appreciate how difficult it is for parents. And I think I've seen it all the time in my own practice. Denial is one of the most common things that you see. And even in some of the most extreme cases I've witnessed, when the evidence is broad as day, it's right in front of them, a parent will say to a police officer, even to, no, you've got the wrong person, this cannot be true, this isn't it. And I just think you have to take a moment to step back and realize to take that step forward. You know, sometimes you have to make mess to clean up. We do it all the time. And I think you just have to be able to take that little step back to go, actually, it's not about blaming yourself. It's not about even taking responsibility for it. It's just about what's that next step looking like. You can't get to that next step if you don't even acknowledge it exists.
All right.
Radical acceptance.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, absolutely. Thank you so much. I think I was lost. I got lost there, but I felt like the conversation was going hard. And thank you so much for that. I think I came back onto radical acceptance. And on that note, I think, Cynthia, I'll get you to kick off this part of the parenting aspect for it. We all have different types of children that we are raising as well. And I want us to actually think about, you know, how we look at the relationships, how we're building resilience. How do you adapt the environment to support the needs of particular children? Because as you're saying, you're like myself, we've got very, very children. And I always children don't have to even be either neurotypical or neurodivergent, for us to know that there's difference between them. I've got a friend who's got three girls, and all three girls, when you look at them, you see so many different characteristics in all these three girls that it's so wild to see. And I always look, as like, you know what, that one's like your mom, that one's like your husband, that one's like this one, and their personalities is like you're in three different continents when you see these girls. So as a parent, how we are saying we want to build resilience in our children. We are saying that we want to be able to see how we can raise these children in a way that, you know, will pertain to them. How do we do that as parents? How do we build these children individually for them to be able to respond according to how the children are, and what are some of the things that parents, I know I'm putting so many things within that question, but I think you get the idea of how do we tailor or adapt our environment to support the different needs of the different children that we have. And Max, I mean, you meet all sorts of children, so after you can actually chime in onto that a bit as well for me, if that's okay. Thank you.
This is such a powerful question with so many implications for different types of families. I think from my standpoint, I'm a firm believer that children are gifts from God. I'm a firm believer that we are meant to be stewards of those gifts. What does that mean? That for me, it means that we are not responsible for crafting a personality or crafting a set of achievements in that child, but we are meant to guide and help the child get as close as possible to what is a firm set of morals and beliefs, in my case, in Christ, and also who they have been called to be. Certainly, it may look different for different families. I can only speak to my faith as a Christian. So from that anchor point, I operate in trying to see the child that God has given me, right? I often used to ask myself, are there neurodivergent people in the Bible? Who are they? Does God make allowances for differences? I've had my own journey, but I think I am firm on children being gifts from God in whatever shape and guise they come in, whether it is neurotypical or neurodivergent. And that our role, irrespective of what the gift is to steward them.
Yeah.
So on that basis, how do I steward my three children? My children are all very, very different. They are loud and bold, won't always listen to instructions, and that's just a common thread I have there. I have a son who is not neurotypical, who has his own sets of demands, right? And he is an amazing, amazing boy, as is the other two children I have. What does this all mean? I think for me, it's seeing each child as an individual, understanding what they want to achieve for themselves. Now, it doesn't mean that whatever they want to do, I think at one point he wanted to be a YouTuber, and another point he wanted to be a gardener. I don't know. I think for me, the core, whatever the child wants to do, it's encouraging them irrespective of what that means. I think we have moved in the young phase to the middle years where it is not you can do all things that you put your mind to, but rationally and soberly, here are the things that you could explore, which is edifying for you, aligns with your skills, aligns with what you have shown yourself so far to excel at.
Yeah.
And this is the case whether you are neurotypical or not. At some point, we do need to move from telling children that they can do all things to here is what we see in you in terms of your ability, your preferences, your capabilities. And what does that mean in terms of being a responsible, functioning adult in society? So I am guided by these principles when I look at my children, and I aim to steward them from one end to the next. I have no conclusion on what they should be, how they should be, but I am there's there's another book which really was influential in how I see different types of personalities. Surrounded by Idiots, I think it's a fantastic book. And it points to how different people show up in the world. What does that mean? What are they leaning to? How do they interpret the world around them? The title is a bit of a misguide there, but it's quite a fantastic reading, helping you to understand differences amongst people. So I think in short, I'm led by that. I am appreciative of the gifts I have, and I am continuously learning on how to shepherd and steward them through life's ups and downs, if that is helpful for anyone else going through raising children with different needs.
Yeah. Yes, I like what you said about the fact that we have to come to a point sometimes where we can tell our children that, it's like, we say, "Oh, the world is your oyster," kind of thing. You can do everything. And I think that particular conversation about
Mm,
screwing it down to help them to be able to navigate it and build on their strengths and
mm,
build on what their you feel like their purpose are, or help them to be able to, you looking at them as a parent, helping them to narrow down in terms of what they realistically will help them to be better people in the society. I really love that
mm,
conversation, because most times parents just like to go on it doesn't matter whether your child is academically like the most
yeah,
brilliant or whatever, or your
yeah,
child is. And I'm always of the I always said to myself, it doesn't matter what my child does, they're just going to be the best of it. If they're going to be a
mm,
photographer, they're going to be the best photographer that this world has ever seen. If they're going to be a housewife, they're going to be that best housewife that everybody would want to know this housewife and know what they are about. And for me,
mm,
that conversation, I believe that is very, very crucial, because a lot of children really miss that conversation. Parents sort of leave their children. I don't know whether they feel like they don't want to hurt their children, or
mm,
they that they don't want to impose things on their children. But I
mm,
feel like that conversation is very, very needed. I think one of the issues that, especially in our community, and I'm going to
mm,
bring that question to you, Max, because I want to talk about, partnerships. Some parents just didn't know. I remember so well, like in my time, I know probably Cynthia, in your time, I don't know the kind of parents that you have, but when I came to this country, and I was born in Ghana, and when I came from Ghana to
mm,
London, and I was going to school, the career paths that my parents ever knew, doctor, nurse, teaching,
mm.
these traditional things. I work in procurement now. My parents have never heard of procurement ever. I had to. They were so skeptical. They're like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "This." They're like, what is that one? Why don't you become an?" I was like, "I don't want to do that." And
Yeah,
sometimes we have some parents within our communities that they really want to
yeah,
help their children. They really want to steward them, but they don't know what is going on in the world. They are on TikTok
yeah,
because and Snapchat because they're using the filters that changes their face. They don't know anything about it. They don't even know that TikTok has a whole headquarters that employs a whole heap of people there. You know,
yeah.
all those kind. And I'm saying that you're not, but that is the truth. That is what we're dealing with. Half of the parents that we are looking on to be able to have these conversations with these children, and just letting people understand we are talking about resilience around us, because all these things that we are able to build in their children makes them life ready.
Mm,
Resilience is not just about waiting for something to happen and then you don't have a mental breakdown. That's when we say that you're resilient. Resilience is being able to bounce back even when your
mm,
grades are not good, even when what you wanted to do in uni you couldn't do it, and so you have to pursue another career path. Being able to bounce back on that is some form of resilience. Being able to pick yourself up. How are we teaching our children to be so open-minded that they will be able to explore and build? That's what we're
mm,
talking about in
mm,
terms of
mm,
resilience. So I'll ask you that question, Max. In terms of
mm,
I got through by the grace of God, and only by the grace of God, because my parents had no idea. You know, both my parents didn't go to uni. My mom didn't. All my mom knew is like, you have to do a master's degree. You have to finish uni, go to do a master's. Even to do a master's degree, she didn't know what. All she knew is, I will support you to do a master's degree. She didn't even know what master's degree, whether I'll get a job, I won't get a job. She had no idea. So for the parents, that I know I've spoken a lot, but I really wanted to, I feel like it was really on my chest, wasn't it? for the parents that is struggling and cannot always address, you know, everything, because they don't, some parents honestly don't even know what is going on in the job markets now. All some parents know is AI is going to take up people's jobs. And my mom keeps on sending me videos about people saying that AI is going to, because mommy, I hope your job is not, AI is not going to take up your job. But they don't even know what job it is. And I'm asking the question is that how can parents build effective partnerships with different entities like schools, like social workers, like mentors, like youth workers, like the church? How can parents build that? What should they do when they feel that their children are not having the right support for them to be able to make it, for them to be able to have that ability to be resilient no matter what happens? Max, I've spoken a lot, but I hope you get a chance there.
No, that's okay. 100%. I think that we're talking about what we're talking about is a massive overview here of what we expect of our child, you know, what we expect them to become and our expectations. We started off this conversation on this, in this anecdote, about the variations in our children and the variations in what we expect in them. And I think you probably don't know your children very well if you think they're all exactly the same, because they're never going to be. They're never going to be. They're going to be completely different beings in their own entities, and trying to get that information is going to, you're better off going and looking for gold somewhere, because they're going to be secretive. They're not always going to want to help it, but that's part of them forming this outer shell that will create that resilience, because I think they can't always be going to parents and saying, oh, this and this and this. You just have to get those little, what do we call them, reachable moments. We'll find those little parts of gold where we reach the child and they have those fantastic conversations with them. They're not going to have one every week. You're lucky if you'll have one every month, but if they are there and they're speaking to you, you're doing the most for them. Now we're talking about a child's success in life as well. Going on to that, I think there are traditional archetypes, but I think that is being broken at the moment, where we're talking about the new job market, the new labor market. And I think it is about also having faith in your child's vision as well. You know, would you not rather a child try and fail than not try at all, than go for mediocrity and go, oh, you know, I think when I spoke to my parents about it, they sort of smothered that dream, even though it was probably the thing I loved at that time. You're better off going, yeah, try it out. Let's see what it is. Obviously, let's be real. You know, they're not going to become pro footballers overnight. And, you know, there has to be some constraints. I think the amount of children I work with who said, I want to become a YouTuber, that's fine. I myself have made YouTube content and video content as a passion all throughout my life, but I've accompanied that with a job that I love, with passions on the side and things that I do. And that's fine. It's never made me a penny, but it's allowed me to still seek those parts of my life that I love and enjoy. And who knows, if I keep at it, maybe one day it'll make me some money. And I think it is about sort of saying these dreams can be your dreams. They can run akin to academia. And I think you'd much rather have a child who is doing the things that they love and exploring themselves and succeeding at that and succeeding at the things that they love than not trying at all and not having those ambitions. An ambitious child will be a successful child.
So what kind of partnerships, Cynthia, if you can come in, if you are able to help us, what sort of partnership can parents have to if they don't know how to be able to push their children? What can parents do?
I like that. And I think before we just touch on that, let me just give a quick defense of our parents who came before us. I equally came in from my parents who had lived here for a few years and then brought myself and my siblings over. And I had this very same conversation with a few friends over coffee. I think the consensus is very much similar to my experience. They came in and showed us what they knew.
Yes.
And what they knew was you must secure stability. And stability for them was a job that you could travel with or you could live in any country with. And for them, it was the doctor, the nurse, the lawyer, the engineer,
The accountant, the
the
engineer.
accountant, right? And there is some wisdom in that.
Yeah.
Now we fast forward to us who have lived here for a while and built careers here, built businesses here. And we know that it takes more than those fields to be able to look after your family. I use the phrase look after your family in place of success, because being able to look after your family should be the yardstick, in my humble opinion. That you can look after yourself and those that you bring into the world should be a barometer that you should use to help guide your options in life. So I certainly say to all my kids, do go forth and pursue and conquer. For our part, we will invest in your exploratory phase. But the exploratory phase comes at a stop at some point. Our goal is not to invest in you indefinitely. It is to invest in you until you have come to some sort of awareness and enlightenment about how you will look after yourself and those you love as an adult. Now, when we come to forming partnerships with others, I am on the fence on this, and I'll tell you why. I don't believe in parachuting in to save the child. I believe in giving them the tools to build for themselves what they need to build for themselves. And I have tried both. So I can happily say I lean on the latter, where I want to equip my child to understand the how to do X, how to do Y, who to call on if you're stuck, giving them that cognitive and self-reliance spirit so they can call for help if they ever get stuck. So there was a season where I was parachuting in, and for example, I would be calling the school, calling the LEA, making sure there is provisions in place for X, Y, and Z, and it's great. But the fallback and the shortfall of that when the child is in the young adulthood phase is that they don't see what it takes to build the castle that you have given them. They don't understand the tools required to replicate that if they ever need to. So they are constantly coming back to you for the same problems that they should have mastered by certain ages. So I am now of the view that as the child is growing, share the problems that you have spotted with them. For example, I want you to fully understand the different pathways of life for a career. Would you like to go and speak to Pastor Phyllis, who works in procurement? Would you like to go and speak to Auntie Sheila, who is a nurse? Because within the community, there are people who have come in and made inroads. Would you like us to help you find someone who can serve as a mentor for you? So you are bringing the child in, you are seeking their thoughts. You are also inquiring what would help that child. So I am, and I don't mean to say that never explore partnerships in the community, with the school, with local employment agencies. But I have now realized that we ought to lean, or I certainly ought to lean more on walking the child through how to build those partnerships. I hope that helps. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You know what? This is very, very enlightening, even especially for me, because as a parent, you automatically just said, "Oh yeah, let me go and find this for the child. Let me do this." When you go ahead and do it without the child, and most often, most parents may probably pretty much moan about the child not being fully engaged because they didn't know. They just you've just done all the work for them, and then they've just jumped on board. So and funny enough, when I was putting down this question, that was not even what I was thinking about, but you've highlighted a great thing, which goes a long way to show how you're building your child for success, and you're building that resilience in that child. Because when they get older and they're going to find jobs, no one is going to come and bring the job to them. They will have to go and have that conversation. They will have to go and begin to talk to people go back, do some research, know what to say, prepare beforehand. And so being able to take the child along in that journey, or even if you don't know and you want to build that partnership, taking your child along that journey. Cynthia, what that was just spot on. Thank you so much for highlighting that. And I've really enjoyed the conversation that we've had today. And I think the only thing that I want to add about it is, obviously Max touched it on earlier on, and Cynthia, you've touched on it in many areas of our conversation today. I'm a Christian, and it is, for me, I believe that being able to build that faith um part of your child is so important, be- because it's something that builds the child and give them a foundation and gives them the ability to be able to navigate even in difficult situations as well. And so I think that for me, the only thing I would want to add onto everything else that we've said is the fact that if you've got a faith, some religious background, or you belong to a certain faith, help the child to be able to know what the basis of that faith is, what it means to be a child of God. In our case, I'm a Christian. Is so tell the child what it means for them to be able to build their life as a Christian, because sometimes that understanding of a higher power helps them pull through, because it makes them understand that they are able to do all things. As the Bible says, I'm able to do all things through Christ that strengthens me. So when your abilities fail, you have that belief that there's a superior power who is able to pull you through even when you don't see a way out. And for me, that's so important. And Max touched about it, that many children are not able to come up with that, grow up with that in front of their friends, their peers, to be able to say that, look, this is what I am, this is what has held me down. And I believe that also our Christians or people within these religious faiths, we have a duty to be able to explore and explain to our children what it means to be a Christian, help them to understand the things, the activities that we're doing. We go to church every Sunday. Why are we going to church every Sunday? Why are we why are we Christians in the first place? Are we just there to pray every day? No, we are there to spread the love of God, the peace of God. I go to New Rivers Mission, and one of our vision is to reveal and spread the truth of God, the love of God, the care of God, and the power of God. Every time I want to show my children what the love of God means, I have to show people what it means to share the truth of God. And the these little things that we're doing, we have a duty to be able to help our children understand, not just drag them along to church, but I'm just talking about in terms of a community, like the church setting or the Christian or religious setting. We have a duty to explain and teach our children what every act of what they're doing means, and what it means for their society, and how important it is for them to represent themselves in that sphere, for them to be able to go ahead and be wonderful people and be able to stand in everything. There is before I come to my closing remarks from both, I ask for the closing remarks from both of you. I want to say that there is a group of young men, three young men, and their name was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they were in a foreign land. They were sold into slavery, but because of they had a great mind, they were intelligent people, they were able to occupy certain places within the government. And this shows that their parents did a great job. Because if their parents had not done a good job when they were sold to slavery, they wouldn't have been able to hold their own. But one of the most important things that they displayed is that when there was a decree that was made, and they decided that they would not stand with that decree, but they would not bow and stand for God. They knew the reason why they said they would not bow. They have the ability to be resilient in the face of adversity. And it didn't matter how much, education they had, they were facing things that were, above all of that, but they were still resilient held onto their faith, and in the end of it, God took them through. So I want us to really think about it. In the face of adversity, in the face of so many things, can your child really hold their own and say that God will take me through? And for me, that that level of building that confidence in that child with God, for them to be able to be resilient, to stand. Those children were resilient. They were teenagers. They were resilient. So they were able to stand and said that, you know what? We would not bow. They stood for what they believed in. Can our children really stand for what they believe in? And for them to be able to do that, we have to be able to build that in them, help them to they themselves understand. And that understanding and that building comes from we, the community, and the parents, things around us. So I want to leave, the viewers with that. But before we go, I'll come to you, Max. You've taken us through so many things tonight around, friendships, the home, the community, the children themselves, and you've made some really, really beautiful points. But I want you to help us. I always like practical steps. What is one practical piece of advice that you would be able to give to a parent that would help them to be able to build this kind of young people or child that we are looking for them to be able to be resilient in the face of all these adversities that life has to offer?
It's funny that you should say practical, because I actually really wanted to close this session with a very small bit of practical advice, and it's sort of slightly real. It's a current trend that's going on. I will go on to what you asked in terms of broader talking, but there is currently a trend going around where young people online are getting bank details and account stuff stolen through online gaming. It's something that's happening. They're using bots, and they go, and I think you're more susceptible if you've got younger children, younger teens. These bots complement teenagers. They invite them to Discord, which is a common thing. Discord isn't a bad app. It's a social media young people use to communicate through video games. And then they get them to sign in. So I think for those listening today, I'd say just have that little conversation, being like, I just want to make sure that if anyone online ever asks for your login details, bank details, anything like that, just say no, because I think it's a current trend that's going on. I'm seeing it a lot all over different kinds of spaces. Friends of mine have reported it to me. So just think practically, that's what I'd have to say, just to go away with, just have that little conversation. But in terms of the future of your young people, I think no one said it was ever going to be easy. Just have faith. Have faith. It was never going to be an easy run. And I think those, as the hardest missions for the strongest soldiers, kinds of thing. And we are trying to you have to see it like that at times. So I will close with those remarks, just a little bit of practical advice and a little note there. Thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you so much, Max. Cynthia, you've really pushed our minds today. And I really love that, because most times parents are on autopilot, and we're quick to jump on what everybody else is doing and not think deeper. You've given us suggestion of 2 books already that we can go and read, and I really feel like as parents we really need to expand and expound. If God has really given us those gifts as children for us to be able to steward, it is not one size fits all, and you've been able to enlighten us for us to be able to think deep around how we're moving in terms of how we're bringing up our children and how we bring the children along, rather than do what everybody else is doing. So I want to ask you the same question I asked Max. If you can give us one practical advice that you would leave with parents about how we build resilience around them, please.
So I would say, don't provoke your children. I remember I was given this advice when I first started having children, and it stuck with me. What does it mean? Don't provoke them. Don't dismiss them, make them feel that their voice is not heard. At least listen, even if you're going to disagree. Listen. Don't undermine them. essentially nurture the relationship, because it's the relationship that will be their safe space, their trust place, their spot for growing into secure, normal, sane adults. So don't provoke the children towards things that are not edifying for them.
All right. Thank you so much. I mean, I've really enjoyed this conversation and I've learned so much. And I want to say a big thank you to yourself, Cynthia. And I want to say a big thank you to Max as well. Max, I really believe we have to come back. I did say we're going to do it last year, but this year we'll make it happen. I want to come back and us to come back and talk a lot about the social media stuff, stuff that's happening online. I think that's the big remit.
Certainly.
Yeah, so I think we will come back to that conversation maybe around half term. We'll try and bring that conversation out to the viewers. But thank you both so much for your time. Thank you both so much for the generous knowledge that you've shared from both perspectives. It's been sound, and I know parents are going to go away with the understanding that, we have a village that has the ability to build your children, but you need to decide which aspects of the village you're going to allow to influence your children. You need to understand where you step in. You need to understand that you have to take your children along, and you need to understand that you need to help your child explore every aspect of this village and help them to understand that the village is there for you, but at some point you would need to make a decision on the things that you want to explore and the things that may be helpful for you. I think one thing that we've also learned as well is helping taking the child along for them to also make their own mistakes, understand things for themselves, and helping them to also, value what the efforts that you're putting in as a parent in our community. I think that these are the things that I really believe that, it's important for us to know and note. So thank you to everybody that has been a part of this conversation. We've spoken about, for 3 weeks, we've talked about resilience within, we've talked about resilience around us, and we've also talked about, what was the other one? Resilience in action. So we've talked about all these three things, and I believe that we've learned so much about, how you begin, the actions you need to take, and then how you take advantage of the things that are around us that can also influence how you move along. So thank you all so much, and we are so grateful that, parents have, people have reached out to me that they've been watching these conversations and they've learned so much, and so we know that these conversations are helpful, and we thank God that we were able to bring this your way. We are coming to an end of our back to school season. I know it's come to an end very quickly. The month of August is coming to an end, and on Monday we will be ending this whole thing, this whole season, with prayers, and we're going to pray to be able about our children and commit them into the hands of God, and pray that from this September we have learned so much, and what we've learned, God will help us to be able to ensure that we put it to action. So we are going to be praying on the 31st, Monday, the 31st of August at 8 p.m. Usually we do it on Sundays, but it's because of the bank holiday weekend. I don't want to disrupt people's enjoyment. So I've pushed it to the Monday. So once you've gone and done everything, please join us at 8 p.m. on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Instagram Live. We will be here and we will be praying to commit our children into the hands of God before they go back to school. Once again, thank you to everybody who has been a part of this initiative, and thank you all so much. We were able to bless our community this time. You know what? I'm short of words in how much everybody has been so supportive, and I really believe this 2026 back to school has been phenomenal and has been life changing, and I couldn't have done it without you all. So God bless you all. Thank you all so much. Please watch the space. We still have very, very, very interesting things coming your way in different
Lots of
facets.
love. Take care, everyone.
Thank you all. So we just want to say bye-bye to everybody, and we shall see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.